Everybody hates rejection, especially manufacturers. Imagine your ready to ship product. After the painting and surface coating process, you have to reject. One of our customer faced this problem and he realized that it is a very costly problem to solve. But we saved some money for him and eventually he was very happy with the solution that we provided. Please watch this video till the end to get the answer. Let me start by telling you a story of how one of our customer achieved almost zero rejection due to bad paint process. This we achieved just by installing a simple oil separation system on its degrease process. So back in 2013, we had one of this customer who manufactures 2 and 3 wheelers for the Indian market. They faced a very peculiar problem. The vehicles that were ready to ship, they realized were having a very bad paint work, or the surface finish on the after the paint process was very bad and their finished components were getting rejected because of that. So the engineers in this company, they conducted various tests and they realized, they came down to the conclusion that the degrease process is not very efficient. So a degrease process, so as you can imagine, or if you don't know, any surface is coated, it goes through an 11 tank or sometimes 7 tank process. So the component to be coated is processed in each of these tanks. The very first tank is the degrease tank. So in this, the whatever oil or grease or contamination is sticking to the surface, that is removed. So this customer, they were dipping the entire chassis of their vehicle inside this degrease bath. But the degrease bath over a period of time without changing or due to ineffective oil separation was not removing the oil and grease sticking to this surface very effectively. Later they realized that instead of removing the oil or grease from the surface, the amount of oil and grease on the surface was actually increasing once after the degrease process. And this was in spite of having an oil separation system installed. So the exact problem that they were facing was of adhesion failure. So by adhesion failure, what I mean is, imagine your surface is having oil or grease on it. And if it is not removed properly, and if you paint or apply some sort of a coating on that surface, instead of the paint adhering to the surface, it sort of adheres to the contamination or the oil or the grease on the surface. And once this entire process is done, it's sort of there is a bubble that is formed of this paint, and this bubble eventually bursts. So where the bubble bursts, over there the paint cannot adhere to the surface. So this is adhesion failure, and this was the problem the customer was facing. So at that time we had recently developed our oil separation system, which we now call as the Mega Coalescer. So now we give these coalescers or oil separation systems regularly to companies which handle the entire paint shop. So by the time, so one of these companies, they recommended to this customer to contact us for this problem. By the time we met this customer and understood their problem, the engineers in the company were almost frustrated, and they were of the opinion that none of the local suppliers can solve this problem, because they considered that the problem is quite huge, because they had these 35,000 liter degrease tanks. So they had actually 2 tanks, one was pre-degrease and then degrease. In the both the tanks, the solution used was same, but pre-degrease had much more oil and than the degrease tank. So the combined volume of the two baths was around 35,000 liters. And in order to solve this adhesion failure, the quick fix or the short-term solution that they had implemented was they were changing this 35,000 liter chemical very frequently, and that cost was almost prohibitive. So they were almost on the verge of importing an effective oil separation system. After we visited and understood their problem, we presented our solution, but they were still not very convinced whether we will be able to solve the problem. So this is when we gave them the assurance that you install our system, and if it doesn't give the desired result, we'll take back the system and refund you back the money. So this commitment or this confidence that we showed in solving their problem, that convinced them to go ahead with our proposed solution. And in 2013, we installed our system, which is still running at this plant. Actually, they ordered another one from us. And let me show you the results of what we achieved from this first installation. So as you can imagine, the engineers in this company were quite frustrated prior to installation of our system. So in order to understand what the exact problem was, they used to collect samples on a weekly basis from their pre-degrease and degrease tanks. And these samples, they gave it to their chemical supplier, which gave them the results of how much oil in their baths. And they plotted these values on the graph. And this is the graph, as you can see. The blue line shows the oil content in the pre-degrease tank, and the orange line shows the oil content in the degrease tank. So as you can see, initially the graph is increasing. So this is prior to installing our system, but there was some oil separation mechanism present on those tanks. So this proves that system was not very effective. After January 2013, you can see the graph has started declining. So this is when our system was installed. Now this decrease in the oil content is in spite of increase in the production volume. So this just proved that we had achieved our initial goal, but the goal was zero rejection. So later on, after 3 or 4 months, because imagine a 35,000 liter tank, it would take, with continuous production going on, it took about 3 to 4 months for ideal oil level, acceptable oil level to be achieved. Once that was achieved, they themselves reported us that they have achieved zero rejection due to adhesion failure. So not only did this company achieve zero rejection due to adhesion failure, they achieved it by in spite of increased production volume. And since we were removing the oil, or our system was removing the oil effectively, life of these chemicals or the baths increased. So they saved on degrease chemicals as well. The frequency of completely changing these baths almost tripled. That is the reason why we still give this solution to our customers. And nowadays, this solution is so popular that almost all the paint shop manufacturers that we know, they implement this solution right at the beginning when they install their paint shops. So this example just proved the importance of surface preparation and removing the oil and grease on the surface component prior to coating process effectively. If you face a similar rejection problem in your paint process, we suspect that it might be due to ineffective oil separation during your degrease process. If you want to know the details of our system, please comment below. we will be happy to share those with you. Thank you.